My name is Chris Omalwa. I work for Nation Media Group. I'm based here in the US. And today I'm speaking to Dr. Roselyn Akombe. Roselyn Akombe is what we now refer to as the former member of the commission, the IEBC. Ros left her post on the commission because of issues that she had. And she's here now in the US, back to her second home. And we're here just to follow up on some of the issues that she has raised, even as we prepare to go into the elections. Ros, let's start from the end. You're back in the US right now. How does it feel being back in your first or second home?
I mean, Kenya will always be my first home. That's where I was born, that's where I was raised. I would have preferred to be there right now, to continue supporting the electoral process, to continue supporting a process of ensuring that we have peace and stability in the country. But obviously, the environment didn't allow me to do that, and that is why I'm back here. I mean, obviously, given that my family is here, I'm happy to be back here and to continue contributing in whatever way that I can to other responsibilities relating to other parts of the world.
Given that you're back now here, has your role as a concerned member of the commission, as a Kenyan, ended, or how is it going to go from here now onwards? What role do you think, or do you see yourself playing in the coming elections?
I still remain to be a Kenyan. I still remain to be a patriotic Kenyan that want to ensure that the right thing is done for my country. So I will speak out as a Kenyan and raise the concerns that I have raised as a Kenyan, no longer as a commissioner, no longer as a member of the IEBC, but as a Kenyan, a concerned Kenyan, because if anything happens to that country, I have a lot to lose as a Kenyan. And I had taken this job, with the commission, precisely because of the concerns that I'd had seen from the 2007-2008 situation in the country. I had watched what had happened, what was going on in 2015-16 in the lead up to the election. And so I had put in my name as a member of the commission because I wanted to avert the crisis that we had in 2007-2008. So that resolve has not ended. That resolve of me saying that I have a role to play as a Kenyan and as an American citizen in pushing these issues does not end, because as a Kenyan citizen, I'll continue raising those issues. As an American citizen, I believe that the US government and other governments also have a responsibility of ensuring that the stability of the country continues to be put at a very high radar, because again, as an American citizen, I understand the role of international partners in what goes on in the country, and that I hope that I will use the few days that I have here to really also raise these issues wherever I am here, among working together obviously with the Kenyan diaspora. We have a very active Kenyan diaspora here that has a stake in ensuring that the stability in the country. So I will not stop playing my patriotic role as a Kenyan. I have a responsibility to continue caring about what is going on there. It's not a role that ended by me leaving the commission. I still have a role to play as a Kenyan citizen.
Since you left Kenya, major things have happened. One, the chairman, Mr. Chepkati, has come out to, in a way, support your claim that, as you see it, the elections, if they have to take place, they won't be fair, free, and credible, as it was directed by the Supreme Court. The chief of the secretariat, Mr. Chiloba, has taken a leave of absence, 3 weeks leave of absence, and Jubilee has taken NASA to court to compel them to come to participate in the elections. Given those things, do you still think that the election should take place?
Look, Chris, if all these moves were being made 4 weeks ago, when we were calling for them, if the CEO and other senior staff had left a few weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, then you could say that it could make a difference. But leaving 6 days before the election really does not make any difference. because every structure that had, the confidence building needed to be done before. It's too late, in my view, to say that by the CEO going on leave now, it will make a huge difference. It will not. And and it's not just about that one person. The credibility of the election is all the other issues that I have raised. It's all about how do you ensure that the training that had been going on, that has been stopped. I have seen reports that some of the training of presiding officers are stopped because of incidents of violence that you had there. I raised issues on technology, on the fact that we were having changes in the technology, the transmission of results too late in the day. So those things have not been resolved. Those things have not been addressed. And the concerns, the security concerns that I had raised regarding our staff and voters in those regions still remain. They have not been addressed. So those are changes that are coming in too little, too late in the day. Regarding the other issues on on the court processes, on taking the leader, Right Honorable Raila Odinga to court, I mean, I've said on several occasions that we're trying to use legal means and electoral means to address purely political problems. Those political problems we have to sit around the table and address those political problems. Legal challenges and going on to with an election on the 26th of October, which the chairman himself has said he cannot guarantee that it's going to be a credible process, really for me defeats the purpose of our whole electoral process. Because you need, the Supreme Court didn't ask us to go back, or didn't ask that the commission goes back and organizes any election. It said that the commission had to go and organize an election that was going to be consistent with the Constitution and consistent with the existing laws. There are many questions that are being raised on whether what we are doing so far meets those the standards set out by the Supreme Court.
We are barely 3-4 days to the elections. All indication is that its systems go. The IEBC has said that they're ready for the elections. Do you think, given your inside knowledge as a commissioner, a former commissioner, do you think IEBC is actually ready for the elections in a week's time?
I enumerated things, that needed to be fixed for us to be able to say, or for the country to be able to say that it's ready for the election. You see, if it's about just having ballot papers in place and asking people to go out and vote, yes, you can say anybody can do that. You can have an election. But it's not just an election. It's about ensuring the credibility of that process, the legitimacy of that process. Those two have been questioned by none other than the chairman himself. So, yes, they can proceed and have an election. And I know that there are parts, we've heard very clearly that there are some politicians who are making noise and saying that an election has to happen at any cost. And I know that, the majority of the commissioners there want to have that election at any cost, which is consistent with what we have heard from a section of the political parties, so political actors. So yes, people will push to have that election, but is it one that is going to resolve the crisis that we have in the country right now? I don't believe so.
Again, based on your inside knowledge, why was it? Why weren't the kits that were used opened? Why was it so hard for the IEBC to open the servers as directed by the court?
One of the things that I keep talking about is the differences that we have. There's two centers of power that you have within the commission. So you have the commissioners under the leadership of the chairman making decisions, policy decisions. Then you have the CEO and the secretariat that then implements those decisions. And that is where the problem really is. So the commissioners had said, let's proceed, let's go, let's abide by the court order. But then you had a case in which the people who are supposed to implement it didn't let it happen. Then I recall very vividly myself and Professor Gulie going over to the 17th floor on the 28th or 29th of August and seeing the stalling that was going on there. Basically people were just logging in, but not providing access to the system. We don't know. I mean, we've been given explanations that the security firewalls were very tight and that's why it took such a long time. But seriously, I mean, it was more from the 28th to the 29th that whatever system that you had in place, you could not be able to provide access, you could not be able to go through those firewalls and be able to give access. It's a difficult explanation to give. But also, what becomes even more tricky is that the commissioners had approved for an audit, an independent audit of the system to take place. That independent audit has not happened up to now. The commission had also asked, the commissioners had approved, that quality assurance audit is done of the system before it's used for the 26th of October election. That has not been done either. So in the absence of such independent audits being done, you can only go by the speculation that is there. So the speculation that was there on the 8th of August as it relates to the servers still remains, because we have not really done our own independent audit. Saffron has done its own, but that is a vendor. So when a vendor comes and gives you their report, yes, you'll accept it for its professionalism, but it's the vendor who's giving you, who's done their self-evaluation and given you and told you that this is what happened. But you need to have an independent, a third party that looks at it and says, okay, you are the service provider. I mean, you can't audit yourself. You can't be the person who's provided the service. You're auditing yourself and you're now giving us and saying this is the audit that we have done of the system. Somebody else has to come in and do that audit and then say, okay, a third party has done this audit and this is what we have found. So in the absence really of such an independent audit done, you cannot really build confidence around the issue of the technology and the issue of the servers, because there are still questions that are being asked that it's difficult to be able to explain or give answers without an audit, an independent audit by the Commission itself.
In your past interviews, you've maintained that to a great extent the past elections were free and fair. I doubt if they were credible. What do you think? Do you still maintain that?
I still maintain that the 8th of August election was fairly credible, that it fairly reflected the will of the Kenyan people, as per the information that I had as a commissioner at the time, because you can only go by what you have. I mean, there's speculation, but that is speculation. So in the absence of anything that shows you otherwise, I have I have not found any reason to distance myself from that election that I was party to in terms of declaring the winner. So, in the absence really of an audit that has been done, which hasn't happened, there hasn't been any audit of the systems, there hasn't been any audit of the forms, I have no reason to say that that wasn't a fair, that it did not fairly express the will of the Kenyan people.
Does it mean that, in your view, if the kits were to be opened and everything else remaining as it is, did Uhuru Kenyatta win the presidency, in your view?
I mean, what I have said is that given the information that I have, I mean, given what has been presented to us, I have no reason to question that. But should there be other evidence that comes up that points another way, then that is something that I will be open to looking at. But for now, the information that we have, at least that I had at the time that we announced the result, was what we announced, that was a fairly representative view of the Kenyan voters.
Of course, no, that's even an unfair question, because the elections were dismissed by the Supreme Court, as it were. A moment like that, like this, becomes a moment of reflection. As a former commissioner, in your view, where do you think things started going wrong as the results were being announced?
For us at the time, the only concern we had was on election night, when the system, when we saw the display was not changing the results, and we asked questions what was happening, and it took Saffron a while to figure out, and they came back to us and they said that the system there were too many people who were trying to access the system, and that is why we were not seeing a display of the results. But that is what we had from the service provider. One of the things that I wish we had, one of our experts there, to be able to verify these things for us, and that is why, on that night for me, I really wished Chris Musando was there. I really wished he was there, because I would have I felt that he would have given us an honest view of what happened. He would have, if there was something that had happened. But in the absence of that, we had to rely on the expert advice that were being given by Saffron at the point.
Does it mean that the experts that that were handling the servers and the kits were not the commission experts, but experts that were given by Saffron?
Yes, a majority of those who were handling the results on that night were Saffron. It was a company that was handling most of it. We had a few of our staff there, but I mean, all the answers, the responses that were being given to us on that night were from Saffron, not from our staff directly.
Again, where do you think things went wrong as the process progressed? Was it? Do you think the interference of the results happened from outside or within the commission?
I mean, I am not saying that the results were interfered with, really. I don't know. I'm just saying that the questions that came to us was about the display, the delay that happened on that night on the display of the results, and the fact that we ended up not having 11,000 of those forms transmitted to us. So I think, for me personally, what I've always said is that I have felt that, you know, the way we handled the Supreme Court case is what led to the defeat. The fact that we did not give access to the servers, the fact that the forms that we presented to them were not in the order in which we were expected to do. So I mean, for me, those are the issues that remain unanswered on why we ended up not giving the forms as they were supposed to be done, why we did not open the servers. And those are the questions that I raised from the very beginning. I raised them from the very beginning. So, you know, when people say, why are you talking about these things now? I look back and I say, I have said them before. I said them in the boardroom on many occasions. And the threats that I started receiving from the 1st of September were threats that I was receiving because I had spoken out and said that if we have staff who are involved in even making, let's even leave the results alone. Let's even leave let's assume that the results were never tampered with. There was no problem. But there are people who made us lose the Supreme Court case. There were people who were given the responsibility of looking at all those forms and ensuring that those forms were the forms that were required. Why didn't anybody go to the chairman, for instance, and ask for the original 34C? Because it is there. There was an original. It is still with him in his office. Why, if you are preparing for the Supreme Court, why didn't you go to the chairman and ask to be given those forms? I have personally seen some of the original forms that had been received from the returning officers, but what was put to the Supreme Court was different. Why were we putting different forms to the Supreme Court from the ones that the returning officers had worked hard to bring? So those are the questions I'd been raising from the very beginning, and saying that the chief operating officer, the CEO, was responsible for coordinating all this. He assured us along with our lawyers that all the forms, that they had gone through each of the forms.
That is Chiloba.
Chiloba, that they had gone through each of the forms, and that the forms that were being given to the Supreme Court were the forms as delivered by the returning officers, that they had all the security features. So when you had our lawyer, Paul Mwite, say that he was ready to have the forms available, it's because that's the assurance we had been given. And then to look around and you find actually that wasn't the case. For me, that's why I had been saying that action needed to be taken against the CEO, because he gave us his word. He had given us his word that he had gone through the forms. So why
do you think it's become so hard for the country to get rid of Chiloba when everything seems to point to his management of the whole election issue?
You know, I have learned a lot in the last 9 months that I was home, that I was in Kenya. I have learned that, you know, the institutions are built in such a way that they're not supposed to serve the Kenyan people. They're supposed to serve political interests. I have learned that CEOs and the secretariat and senior secretariat staff are put there for a reason. They work for a system. And that is why that system will fight you back if you're trying to touch people who serve their interest. And that is what you have seen come out. You're going to see more of attacks against Roselyn Akombe, against my personal life, against all this, because I'm trying to raise concerns. I have raised concerns that touch on the system. and that system will come back and beat you hard. And that is what we saw. That's what it is. So if you are serving that system will protect you. If you are not serving that system, it will come back and beat you up, which is what it's doing right now to me. And so that is my response to that question. And so people, some commissioners, including the chairman, what he's going through is because he's not serving the system. If he was serving the system, he wouldn't be going through the kind of humiliation that you saw him go through at Parliament, where you're seeing members of Parliament telling a whole chairman, turning him away from a parliamentary session and telling him to go back and bring his commissioners. Who does that?
What? Let's talk about that sense of insecurity. There's a Twitter message that is going around under your handle that says you personally saw somebody put a gun on the head of the chairman. Is that true? Is that your message?
No, there are so many Twitter accounts and Facebook accounts that have been set up in my name. I don't have the @Roselyn _Akombe or any other Twitter account is not mine. That is not my Twitter account. I actually do not tweet. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't have a single Facebook page. So all the things that people are seeing on social media, those are not mine. I don't engage in social media. So whatever is posted on social media under my name is absolutely not mine.
Have you ever been threatened as a commissioner because of what you do, because of what you've spoken about, because of what you've insisted on? Have you ever had threats at your life?
Chris, if I did not have those threats, I would have remained at home. If I did not have those concerns, I would still be in Kenya. I wouldn't be here because, I'm, as a person who believes in problem solving, I would have stayed there. But it's those threats that made me realize that there are certain things you can't say and remain in that country. I mean, I had received threats. I had received visits from some politicians coming to talk to me and telling me that I needed to leave. I mean, I was under extreme pressure between the 1st and the 5th of September to resign. So I actually find it amazing now that, the same politicians are castigating me for resigning. They wanted me to resign at that point. And why did they want me to resign at that point? Because they felt that I was asking for Ezra and some of their own secretariat staff, the director for operations, director for ICT, who are very close to the system, to step aside, to allow us to be able to build the confidence in the system, in the IEBC, in the commission. So there were threats at one point. One of them came and told me, you had told us that the only reason maybe you could resign is if there were threats to your life. We are now coming to tell you that your life is in danger. You really need to go. You really need